You ready for this?
Gonna be fun.
You will not stand in my way.
Frostborn. Hunger. This pleases me.
I do not fear you, mortal.
Your soul shall be mine.
Don't make me laugh.
Needs a brew? Oh, I do. Feel a shredding, baby. Let the battle begin.
So hello and welcome to the 56th episode of the Nexus Trolls, a podcast all about Heroes of the Storm, part of the Trolls.gg entertainment network. So I'm your host, Linus Daz Kilius, and I'm joined today, as always, by a Mystic. How's it going, Mystic? How's your week been?
It's been kind of hectic. You know, the finals are coming up and whatnot, so I got to study for those.
Oh, you youngins having to study for exams. Those days are far behind me. Well, hopefully that goes well. Hopefully we're not cutting into your study time, but I'm sure you're playing Heroes of the Storm occasionally to blow off some steam while studying. So for those of you watching or those of you listening, you might be wondering where LiQuiuD is. He actually had a work emergency come up, so myself and Mystic are going to be holding down the fort today. LiQuiuD is also going to be missing trolling HGC after the Nexus Trolls today. It's going to be Bags, and it might actually be me. We'll have to see who the emergency sub is. Maybe Bags will have someone in place before it comes to me getting in there. But for the meantime, we're not talking trolling HGC, we're talking the Nexus Trolls, and we've got a great show on the docket today. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter one because we actually have a special segment after the show. So if you're watching the show, make sure you stick around for after the show. About 15 minutes after the show ends, and if you're listening to the audio of this, we're going to stick it in after the credits. We're going to be doing the Nexus Feud. If you remember on our 50th episode, we actually did like a family feud episode. It was so well received and everyone liked it so much, we're going to start making it a reoccurring thing. It's going to be separate from the podcast. We'll make sure we stick it at the end of the podcast. And instead of just having like the guests and the hosts on it, what we're going to do now is we're going to be doing like tonight's going to be Trolls.gg against the Gankbush squad. So we're actually having two families kind of duking it out. So stay tuned for that because it's going to be a lot of fun and I'm pretty excited for it. But before that, we're going to be talking patch notes. We got the PTR patch that we missed going over last week, at least part of it. We're going to be talking about the stealth changes to Nova, Valera, Zeratul, Samuro. And then also, we're going to be talking about the support nerfs that everyone's been chattering about over the past couple weeks since they've been announced, because this is going to change things quite a bit. We've got quite a few changes with the supports and the stealths, and also just how like laning and everything's going to be going as soon as the PTR patch goes live. This game's going to be a lot different. What do you think, Mystic? Is this going to be like, is this Heroes 3.0? Is that what we're hitting now?
Oh man, I think it's almost like Heroes 3.0. It'll probably, when Blizzard releases Heroes 3.0, it'll probably have like a lot more stuff, but it's basically the same thing with all the stealth changes, all the healer apocalypse, and the performance-based matchmaking. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I guess it's a really good time for Blizzard to drop this too, because we don't have HGC going on. So I feel like the pro teams are going to have more time to take a step back and maybe respond to what's going on here, analyze the situation, try and like figure it out, because there's so much changing. Like it's so hard to analyze exactly how this is going to shake out. Like who knows, maybe at the end of the day, Butcher's going to be the top hero coming out of this for all we know, right? There's just so many factors and it's so hard to predict exactly how this is going to end up after the end of the day. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Before we start the show, we always like to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/trollsgg. You're never going to have to pay a dime for this show. It's always going to be free. But if you're looking for a way to support us, you can head over to patreon.com/trollsgg. Every little bit helps. Thank you so much to those who have become patrons of the show. Now we've got a Troll of the Week this week. Troll of the Week this week is Lord Boo. Lord Boo actually agreed to become our senior editor for the Trolls.gg website a couple weeks ago, and he's been hard at work taking a nice burden off of mine and LiQuiuD's shoulders, reviewing articles and helping get those posted up as promptly as possible, and he's obviously a great friend of the show as well. So Lord Boo, thanks so much, and he's actually going to be subbing in for LiQuiuD during the Family Feud episode that we're going to be doing after the show. So double thanks, Lord Boo, and for those reasons, you are the Troll of the Week. So that brings us along to our news segment.
Someday, this will make a great story.
The most important news, Mystic won the HOTS debate last week. You feeling good? You took down the Titan.
Oh yeah, it was. It felt good that LiQuiud finally lost for once.
I feel like we had to get rid of him from being on the HOTS debate for 1 week finally, because I think he's won like 4 or 5 in a row, including the one before last, where he had to debate Cavalier Guest in a really tight race. But I mean, Cavalier Guest is no slouch. If you're debating against anyone, the last person you want to debate against on a HOTS related topic is probably Cavalier Guest, and yet LiQuiud still took him down. So Mystic, congrats on taking down LiQuiud finally. So I guess that means that's gonna be me up against you next time, bud.
I accept the challenge.
So as a punishment, LiQuiud's gonna have to write an article for the site. Maybe we'll get him to write a guide on Valera or something, because everyone knows that he's such a Valera main these days. So maybe that'd be good content for the Trolls GG site. So another piece of news, and this is not completely verified. I was actually considering whether or not to put it in here, but it sounds like next week's Brawl is going to be Escape from Braxis again, but with a higher difficulty. It's going to be Heroic Escape from Braxis. This just kind of leaked maybe like several hours ago. Someone made note that they noticed it on the China server, so we're assuming it's going to be coming along to the North American server and the European servers as well. A lot of people, I've been seeing a lot of people playing Escape from Braxis this week. I've seen a lot of people pop into HOTS that I haven't seen in HOTS at all in the last few months, just to play Escape from Braxis. And I've even found myself playing it probably at least 10, maybe even 15 times, trying to improve that speedrun time. Have you been liking it too, Mystic?
I feel like it was a really good, refreshing Brawl compared to the other ones that are just PvP. I don't know if you noticed, but like StarCraft, they put out some PvE content. A lot of people flock to that. And then Heroes, they put out this Brawl that's like PvE, right? And then a lot of people are just like, it's not PvP? Oh, it's something that I could try out. Like, I like the Heroes, I just don't like the PvP.
Do you think this is like a little bit of a hint of things to come? Maybe we'll see some more PvE content too. A lot of people have been asking for it.
I think Blizzard has been listening, so I think there might be more PvE content on the way.
That'd be pretty cool. This is obviously a good test run. I think this is the first PvE thing we've ever gotten outside of like the tutorial, if you want to count that as PvE. But still, I think this is great, and you must love it as a StarCraft fan too, because it really had. I mean, like I've never actually played StarCraft 2, but it had that kind of StarCrafty feeling to it too. So I'm sure you probably enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, it was actually really cool seeing, hey, I can use Heroes of the Storm heroes to, like, they basically put it in the StarCraft universe, and you get to fight all these different StarCraft things, and then Primal Diablo.
Yeah, it was interesting some of the different characters they slotted into there to obviously fulfill like the whole level and everything too. But it was neat seeing your non-StarCraft heroes in there. Infested Murky too was kind of cool. So anyways, their most successful Brawl, I'm not surprised they're doing it for another week, and it was fairly easy. I feel like if you played this Brawl, as long as you stuck together as a party, and you generally would do pretty well. It was kind of like if you got caught on your own, like I thought it was actually impossible to die at first, but then I noticed that depending on who you queued with, you might have people that just charge forward, they'd end up dying, and it could snowball pretty easily if you weren't careful. But I can see why they wanted up the difficulty a little bit to make it a little bit more exciting, I guess, for those more coordinated teams. So we also had Caldor do about a 45-minute segment talking with one of the devs about performance-based matchmaking, clearing the air on a lot of the questions that everyone has. Everyone's been so concerned recently about like being able to game the system, and obviously everyone's always skeptical of things. This is the internet after all. But Caldor talked to the dev and set us straight on a lot of topics. I don't think you watched it, Mystic, so I'll just kind of go over what he said, but it was just basically reiterating that everything's going to be okay. The system's going to learn based on, it's not just like, hey, how much, your camping is Illidan, like what kind of siege damage you have as like a Zagara or something. There's 20 plus factors it's going to be taking into account, and those factors aren't set in stone. It's based on other play by other Illidan's, by other Zagaras, and it's comparing you to them. So it's kind of like a learning adaptive system, which is great because it makes it more difficult to game the system. And he was saying that, okay, like if you just go start be like, hey, well, this game's a loss, I just want to pad my stats, that's not necessarily going to help. The system should be smart enough to be able to overcome things like that, and they're going to be refining it over time. At the end of the day, it sounds like this system is going to be amazing for getting people to the proper rank faster. And that's one important thing to note. It's not just going to get you there faster if you're, stuck in the bronze leagues, but if you're incorrectly placed in the diamond leagues, this is going to pull you down to earth as well. So important things there. Check it out if you'd want to. You can check it on Caldor's YouTube channel, or the link for it's also in our show notes. So we're not going to be going over a lot of esports stuff. We'll save that for Troll and HGC. We'll let Bags go over that since he's more of the esports expert of the group, of the two of us, anyways, of the three of us. So we're just going to move along and talk about the live patch that dropped dropped today. So we're not going to go over every minute detail. We're just going to kind of go over the broad strokes here. There were some minor changes to heroes like Tychus and Joanna, for instance. They had their mana cost removed for their activatable traits, so their Ds no longer cost mana. Thank God, because as Joanna, when you need that emergency button and all of a sudden you're out of mana, that's one of those feels bad situations. And same with Tychus on his minigun. Like, I feel like traits probably shouldn't be costing mana to begin with. I'm assuming you probably agree with me, Mystic. You think these are good moves?
Yeah, I think that Tychus's trait costing mana and Johanna's trait costing mana was just a relic of the old age, basically. Blizzard was like, their abilities, so we should give them a mana cost, but then when a bunch of the newer heroes started coming out with their traits costing no mana, it kind of threw it off a little bit. So this is just like fixing up a little bit of the quality of life stuff.
Dusting off those old shelves, eh? We're talking about a bit off camera. One thing that I'm surprised they haven't dusted off yet is Malfurion's scouting drone. Why does Malfurion, a Warcraft hero, have a StarCraft scouting, I'm assuming it's a StarCraft type thing, scouting drone? That seems very unthematic of a Malfurion. We should probably replace it with something, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's another like Blizzard thing where they have a bunch of old stuff that they haven't replaced yet, where they made a scouting drone and they wanted to make it like a universal thing. It's the thing that you put up and it gets sight, but there's a lot of traits that are tailored to their heroes now, so I don't see why they can't change scouting drone into like a skybound wisp or something,
or a treant with binoculars, right?
Oh yeah, that'd be really cool to see, actually.
There you go. So I figured we'll start seeing more of this cleanup, and it just happens slowly over time, but that's the one that has always struck me as odd, why that one's never been fixed. So Sonya, that poison spear damage has been reduced significantly, and oh man, as a squishy, if you got caught with that poison spear, it hurt a lot. You think this was warranted?
Yeah, something about playing Vala, getting hit by poison spear and losing half your health for it is it's kind of off-putting, but yeah, it was doing a lot of damage.
Yeah, it was definitely an overtuned talent to take, so I'm glad they pulled that back a little bit. So Zul'jin got some nerfs too. He's been performing pretty well, and a lot of it centers around his W ability, specifically his level 7 Arcanite Axes, which gives him infinite stacking on his W. You always got to be careful with those infinite stacking abilities, because if you're not too careful with it, they'll just keep going on forever and become like an insanely powerful attack. I remember like Asmo, his taste for blood used to be uncapped. Correct? Am I wrong on that? I seem to remember it being uncapped at one point. Maybe I'm totally off base. Maybe the viewers in chat can correct me here if they remember the days of the beta and early days. I don't think I played Asmo really seriously until probably this was already changed, and I never hit the cap anyways. But for those like really skilled players, just being able to blow the doors off an ability like that lends to like infinite, almost like really insane level of scaling. So they decide, okay, let's rein back the W a little bit, make it a little bit easier to deal with, because that burst, once you had it fully talented out, was pretty insane, right, Mystic?
Yeah, if you can get Taste for Blood stacked up all the way, it hits really hard. It gets to the point where if you use the Black Pool, you can almost one-shot certain heroes with a single Q.
We're talking about Zul'jin though. I'm sorry, I circled back to Zul'jin. I guess I
Oh,
should have
oh.
said that. No, his combo, like his just his burst was really dangerous, and that's I guess what they're trying to nerf here, right?
Segue is too seamless. Honestly, between the changes for Zul'jin, he still hits at pretty hard, just not as hard. And the 20 damage change on the guillotine is it's still guillotine. It's still gonna hit really hard when Zul'jin is low on health. So I don't find it that big of a change.
Well, we'll go over all the changes because I feel like there's lots of little bits that kind of add up to a lot in the end. We'll go over just the kind of the key talents and abilities that were affected here. On level 1, Recklessness got an interesting change. Recklessness gives auto attack and spell power below 75 and 50% health respectively. So they changed it so the spell power is less and the auto attack power is more. And they also swapped the thresholds. So I can see that maybe, okay, they're like, we gotta get rid of the spell damage ability build that Zul'jin's going with, and you'll see how the theme kind of portrays through when you go through the whole talent tree here. Because level 4, Amani Rage. This is an activatable trait where you press your one button or whatever key was bound to. It would reduce his health temporarily and give him a heal over time for 6 seconds back up to his original health. So you'd obviously get, that increased attack speed, higher guillotine damage, etc. because of it. And then he'd get that health back, so it wouldn't be as much of a sacrifice or be as dangerous to be at low health because you have this option instead. So they changed the duration of the heal over time to 10 seconds, making it a bit more dangerous, but also reduced the armor value from 10 to 5. That, don't forget, Guillotine 2 scales based on like how low on health you are. So I can see this being like the Guillotine, trying to nerf that down a bit, also affecting Amani Rage vis-a-vis affects Guillotine as well. Level 7, that's the Arcanite Axe's stacking ability that we talked about before. So that's the infinite stacking damage on Twin Cleave that you used to get. You still get that, but they did take away the cooldown reduction you get on Twin Cleave, so you can't use it as often, so hence that should take down the stacking slightly. Guillotine damage was reduced by 6%. Lacerate at level 13, this reduces, it gives us an extra slow on your Twin Cleaves. That slow has been reduced. Level 16, wrong place, wrong time. That's where if you got hit by 2 of the cleaves at the same time, you take bonus damage. That bonus damage has been reduced by 1/3. So all of this together just screams at me, hey, we don't want the W ability doing as much. They probably looked at that damage pie and be like, there's way too much coming out of his W and his guillotine. We got to pull that back and try and balance his damage across all of his abilities. So do you think like this feels like a nerf into the ground of his W? Do you think that's the case? Or do you think it's just that maybe they wanted to just tune this build back because it was just that strong?
I think they just wanted to tune it back because it was too strong. While I think a bit of these nerfs are heavy-handed, I think they were worth it because if you were getting hit by those Twin Cleave axes, they were hitting like really, really hard.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. And this one thing that I hated playing against Zul'jin too is the slows that you get from Lacerate after 13 too. And that's oppressive. If you're slowed down, it's easier to hit a target like that with Guillotine. It's easier to hit him with anything. Like just trying to run away from those slows, especially when they're such large slows like that can stack up pretty significantly. Like you just end up being a sitting duck with not much of a counterplay to that anyways. Especially, we talked about cleanse before, right? Not as many cleanse options in the game. So we'll have to see how Zul'jin shakes out. I have a feeling this is going to hit him pretty hard in the win rate department. We don't have enough stats yet to actually see what that's going to shake out to be on Hot Socks since this patch just dropped recently, but I expect to see him brought back down to earth. Now, the hero that got the really big changes today on the patch was Sgt Hammer. I haven't seen Sgt Hammer been played in a very long time, and I kind of understand why. It's just so much easier to counter Sgt Hammer than it has been in the past. Sgt Hammer, like playing a Sgt Hammer, it felt like you almost never want to siege up because you're just way too vulnerable once you siege up. And anytime I did have played a Hammer the past few months, you see him siege and everyone's like, okay, it's go time. Everyone jumps on Hammer. They just has like kind of a clunky disengage from a siege to get out of there. And generally by that time he's dead, or she's dead, especially if you got like Chromies, Lemings, anything that can kind of do that long distance burst. So they have given Hammer some tools to help, make siege mode more attractive and give Hammer more utility while in siege mode to help that kind of dive situation. So let's go over exactly what happened, and then we'll talk about, is this enough? Is this going to really change how Hammer's going to be played? Is this going to make Hammer a more popular hero now? So one of the big things, and I pulled out Sgt Hammer in siege mode just to try out and experiment with a few things. One thing that's really tough to get used to is siege mode's been moved from E to D. So that's kind of a bit of a change, just mechanically speaking, once you have to get rid of that muscle memory. But also the range bonus of siege mode has been increased from 5 to 6. So an additional, extra unit of distance. Also, siege mode does 20% bonus damage to all enemies, not just minions and minions and structures like it used to. It used to do 30% damage to extra damage to minions and structures. And we've also got an increased range of spider mines and concussive blast when in siege mode. So it's not completely like dragon form Alexstrasza, but you do have empowered abilities when you're in siege mode. What do you think about at least these initial changes here to siege mode? Is this a good place to start? Obviously there's other things we're going to be talking about in a second, but is this a good place to start, Mystic?
I mean, it is a good place to start, I feel like, but I don't know. I just don't like the ability that they put on her E that replaced siege mode, Neosteel Plating.
Why don't we tell everyone what that is then? So Neosteel Plating, it grants 25 armor for 2 seconds, but 50 armor if in siege mode, and it's on a 12-second cooldown. So that's a pretty, strong ability to be gained. Completely, a completely new ability to her kit, right? This is in addition to, it's adding something baseline. So this is a pretty big buff, I think. How about you?
I think the ability is really strong on paper, but I don't know. You just activate it and you just take less damage. I don't think it's a very interactive ability. I mean, for opponents, it's like, okay, so you're going to throw something and then have her activate it, and then she just takes a lot less damage. She's going to wait for it to be over and then go in on her. But, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, 50 armor is pretty significant too. You can almost sit there and weather some bursts then too. If you see it coming in, you hit that E ability, right? And there's some nice juicy talents to go along with this new E ability too that make it even more attractive. So why don't we go over some of the talent changes too that we've come across here. So level 1, advanced artillery, pretty much everything got a little bit of a change. Advanced artillery, that's where you used to give a 10% bonus damage to distant targets. Now gives extra splash damage for shots, 50% up from 25%, which is the normal splash, and the radius has been increased. Ambush got an interesting change too. That's where when she sieged up, she'd go into stealth mode. Well, you get the stealth not only while sieging, but if stealth is lost because you start attacking or use abilities or whatever, you'll go back into stealth mode if you don't do anything for 3 seconds. And also too, with the new stealth changes, this is on the PTR, you'll get full invisibility after 1.5 seconds of being stealth too. So that affects her there too. So she'll be completely invisible if she's just sitting there in siege mode, which that's what she does in siege mode, right? So she'll pretty much be invisible once she sieges up or stops doing damage for a bit. Maelstrom Rounds is a new one. It's an active ability. It increases her auto attack damage by 40% for 5 seconds. It's got 3 charges and a 90-second cooldown, but basic attacks versus structure reduces cooldown by 5 seconds. So you can reduce the cooldown pretty significantly, and you've got 3 charges you can stack up too. And this seems pretty nice. I'm seeing extra damage. I can see these auto attacks building up pretty quickly. What do you think of these level 1 talents in general, Mystic?
I think the ambush talent is really interesting just because after the stealth changes, right, then, because she can't move while she's in siege mode, really, then being a, or I guess not permanent, but being an invisible tank is just really funny to me because You're just sitting there and you're sieging, and then suddenly you just turn completely invisible and no one can see you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's not a bad thing, you know, as a tactical, but you can siege up in a spot, and if you're completely invisible, that changes a lot of things. Like, I mean, you're body blocking still, but other than that, you're completely undetectable.
And then Maelstrom rounds, I think is really, really strong. It may have a 90-second cooldown, but 40% for 5 seconds for Sgt Hammer's siege mode is actually quite insane.
Yeah, and the fact that, okay, like, say you get into a fight and you've got all 3 charges up, that's 15 seconds of 40% extra basic attack damage, which is where all of your damage is coming from pretty much as Hammer anyways. So that's a pretty big boost. I think Maelstrom Rounds is going to be the go-to talent here for sure, and I think they might have to revisit, you know, the 40% increase, or maybe even just the duration. I mean, she doesn't get a lot of shots off in 5 seconds, but still, like 3 or 4 shots at 40% extra damage can make or break the difference, especially when you got splash damage involved here too.
Mm-hmm.
So level 4, Siege Tactics. This is a new one where Hammer becomes unstoppable for 2 seconds when using your E in siege mode. So rooting, if a root goes down, you got time to unsiege, or I guess you just, while you're siege, you press the E button and you can pop out of there. It's kind of like having a Joanna D on demand, right? Not only that, but you also get the extra, you know, armor as well too, from just basically what E does to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vigorous Assault has kind of been retooled and changed the name to Regenerative Biosteel. This is where Hammer will heal for 15% of auto attack damage, but only while in siege mode. It used to be so that you didn't have to be in siege mode to get this healing return. And I can already see synergies here. Maelstrom Rounds and Vigorous Assault. So 40% more damage, 40% more healing from that. That takes that 15% number up to 20, like low 20s percentage. That's getting significant, not to mention that's, you know, a lot of damage output, a lot of self-sustain coming back in. You know, we got these healer nerfs coming. Maybe this is a good, you know, way to combat that by having increased self-sustain healing. So what are your thoughts on these 2 talents?
I think those are really good talents. The only caveat is that these are only in siege mode. So if you're not in siege mode, you almost get no value. Well, you do get no value from these talents, which is kind of interesting because, you know, before we had Hammer not going to siege mode, because as Daz said before, that you know, it was kind of detrimental to go in siege mode because you got easier to hit for skill shots and whatnot. And now we have all these talents that's just like, okay, we make you really strong in siege mode, but you don't get any of these benefits outside of siege mode. So
yeah, and it seems like that's really strong, like the story here. You go into siege mode and you want to get into siege mode to become effective. And there's the give and takes, right? Like you're doing more, you've got more tools, but you're also more vulnerable and immobile. So, I mean, that I feel like that is what they want to do with Hammer, because siege mode tank is what is, like, you know, the big thematic bit for those siege tanks, right? Like I'm remembering back to my, you know, StarCraft lore here and just seeing those those tanks siege up and do so much damage. I'm assuming that's why they kind of want this to follow suit. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Mystic, because you're obviously the SC2 authority in this room currently. So level 7 is interesting now because 2 talent choices have been brought in from level 16 that are now available level 7. Usually you had to wait till late game to get Hover Siege and Graduating Range. And those are a big power spike for Hammer. Now that's to level 7. That being said, they've both been kind of nerfed slightly because now they're earlier talents. Hover Siege, you only move at 25% speed instead of 50, so you're moving around mega slowly. Graduating Range, the max bonus damage has been reduced significantly as well. Or sorry, max bonus distance has been reduced as well. It's been reduced, but don't forget her attack range has been increased, so it balances out to a certain degree. When you played Hammer, which one of these do you usually take? I was kind of a Graduating Siege type Hammer, but a lot of people I noticed love taking Hover Siege.
Personally, I really like Graduating Range, especially when it was at 16, because it meant that your range was just insane. You could sit really, really far back, siege like you're supposed to because you're a siege tank, and then your enemies have to go through all your mines, all your teammates and stuff just to get to you, and you could shoot them all the way on the way there. Hover Siege, I only took in like specific situations where they might have had a chromie or something, and I had to move ever so slightly to the left or right to try to dodge for sand. So
Yeah, I mean, like you said, graduating range is great because you've got that larger area, that like blast zone that everyone's got to get through now to get to you, and it felt nice once you had that maxed out. The only problem is it obviously took a while to get there. So level 13, tactical mine deployment. Spider mine slow increased from 25 to 40%, and casting thrusters leaves behind a trail of mines. That seems pretty strong to me. Entrenched is the other one, level 13, that I wanted to point out here. Concussive blast damage and knockback increased by 75% when in siege mode. So again, this is helping your escapability, your survivability while in siege mode. The story continues. What do you think about these ones?
I think tactical mine deployment is going to be really, really funny because not only does it increase the spider mine slow from 25% to 40%, which is 40% slow is like pretty big, is that when you use your Z to cast your thrusters, you just leave a bunch of mines behind you. That's just so funny to me. Like garage chasing you, then you just press your Z, you run away, and then he has to go through 5 mines. And most people, I'm not gonna lie, is probably not gonna go through those 5 mines with 40% slow. That's quite insane.
Yeah, it seems by level 13, unless you're stun locking Hammer on the engage, you're gonna have a tough time dealing with her because of the slows, of the unstoppables that you might get as well. These like plethora of mines you gotta run through that not only do damage but slow you so much too. It's not gonna be an easy character to catch. Level 16, she's got a new one, Mechanical Know-How. Her E, not only can it make you unstoppable, not only does it give you 50% armor when you're in siege mode, but it also now would grant a 5% shield for 2 seconds. And if destroyed, she gets another 50% bonus auto attack damage for 5 seconds. So that's nuts. If I'm doing my math here right, we got 40% from Maelstrom rounds, 50% from Mechanical Know-How, and you do extra if you're in siege mode too. This is getting up there.
Yeah, if you combine this with the Maelstrom rounds, and the talent is kind of set up in a way that it has counterplay, because if you think about it, it's like Neo Steel Plating grants a shield equal to 5% of Sgt Hammer's maximum health. It's like Sgt Hammer's health isn't exactly like super high to begin with, so why even give herself a 5% shield? Well, it's because if it's destroyed, then she gets the 50% more basic attack damage for 5 seconds. So the only reason it's there really is for counterplay. It's if you don't destroy the shield, she doesn't get the super 50% more basic attack damage for 5 seconds.
If you see that incoming orb, that incoming Chromie Sandblast, you can pop your E, get hit, and hey, you're off to the races because there goes your 5% shield. You get extra bonus damage. Thanks a lot, Chromie or Li Ming, for that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine a stim droned Hammer with, I guess, her auto attack build? I feel like you're almost going to melt a fort or a keep within a couple seconds, essentially, or even whole teams because all that splash damage too. Like think of the damage you get in the mosh, like out of a mosh pit or something, if someone like, lands something pretty solidly there.
Yeah, the auto attack damage is going to hit really hard.
Yeah, at level 20, she's got a couple new ones too. Shrapnel mines. Each Spire mine reduces enemy armor by 10 for 3 seconds. So if you're putting down 3 when you lay your Spired Mines, plus potentially another 5, I believe it was, when you do your other ability too, that's a total of 7 mines you can toss out. I'm trying to find... Okay, at least behind trail mines. I think it was up to 5 mines. So I think you can get up to like 8 mines laid out there, reducing everyone's armor. That can be a pretty powerful bit, especially, again, when someone engages you, they hit those mines, your auto attack damage is going to hit them even harder now. However, Ultra Capacitors is a pretty cool talent too. Every enemy hero hit with a basic attack while in siege mode increases attack speed by 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 40%. And I double checked to make sure this was the case, but that 5% does refresh as long as you keep attacking heroes. So it's pretty easy to maintain it at that 40% if you're constantly hitting heroes. Now, what do you think about that one? That just screams don't fight in hammer range to me.
Yeah, basically. Well, I think Ultra Capacitors is really good because it does up your attack speed by, 40% eventually. I think Shrapnel Mines is really strong just because Blizzard has put a bunch of armor in the game and, a bunch of healers and whatnot give armor now. A lot of the tanks, give armor or have armor. And the Shrapnel Mines, if you think about it, you can put down the mines, you can use your Z to get away from like assassins or tanks, and then that would just reduce all their armor. And without armor, then that means the rest of your team is doing that much more damage.
Yep. The one thing that I want to see gone, I kind of wish they took it away here, was Hammer's level 20 augment to her big gun. I forgot like the name that's escaping, where it just goes around and around and you just throw that in the lane and slowly like chunk away forts or keeps. I just hated that. I hate that ability. I know like you're giving up a little bit by taking that, but still, I just would love to not see that anymore, because I feel like it was just felt like there's no counterplay. You can't destroy that big projectile coming down the field. It's just, it's gonna keep coming over and over again, and that keep or fort is gonna be gone within several rotations of it. Anyhow, that's Hammer. How do you think she's gonna do here? Is she gonna shine with these changes, or do you think this rework is not enough to make her more popular again?
I think personally it will make her stronger than she is right now. Like overall, I think it will be a buff, because while they did nerf her basically not siege mode form, because they made a bunch of the talents you have to be in siege mode for, but her siege mode form, if it's not getting blasted by like Chromie, KT, all the mages in existence, it's going to be really strong.
Yep. And I really hope she's not too strong, because last thing I want to see is the hammer meta, where maybe we'll be first banning hammer and garrosh instead of just garrosh. But yeah, that's the last thing I want to see. Like those specialty heroes that are almost like gimmicky, you never want them to be top of the meta, like a Murky. Like when Murky was king for that week or two, that was not a fun place to be. So speaking of changes, supports is probably the biggest topic of discussion with this new patch that came out. Blizzard and everyone else has said, you know what, we don't really like this double support meta too much. Blizzard sat back, analyzed it with a silver-toothed comb. Is that a saying? I don't even know if that's the right saying, but they analyzed it very thoroughly, and they have a blog post about it too. You can see the blog post. The link for that will be in the show notes. But they took their changes into consideration here, because you change supports, you can change a lot of things. Like you decrease their healing, well, maybe you need more supports to balance that healing out. If you decrease their damage, like is that going to really get rid of the effect that we've been seeing? Well, Blizzard came back and said, you know what, supports are just strong heroes, too strong in general as a class. So what we're going to do is we're going to rein back their health by about 5%. We're going to rein back their healing by 5% and their damage by 5% almost across the board. The effect of this, and a few other changes I'll mention in a bit, is they want to weaken wave clear and make it so that if you do take two supports, you're sacrificing more than you were before. The whole problem with going double support previously was, okay, you go to two supports, yeah, you get great healing out, but you're lacking potentially in wave clear, lacking potentially in damage, especially in pub leagues. You might not have enough to finish off those heroes. Like, yeah, you might last forever, but you might not be able to secure a kill. Obviously, in coordinated play, they're a lot better about focusing damage. But Blizzard's now saying, okay, let's make this even more of a trade-off if you take those two supports. So they've decreased those numbers, as well as taken off Lightning Bond on Rhaegar and Moonburn on Malfurion to wave clearing type abilities, to make it so that almost every single healer now has below average wave clear. So if you take two of them, you're seriously lacking in that department, as well as the damage side of things. So a couple other notes too: Rhaegar, Stukov, Uther, and Kharazim, all the melee supports, they avoided the health decrease nerf because they're frontliners. Part of Blizzard's argument is, okay, if we make them a little squishier, it's like there's less reason to want to take them too. But if you're taking the melee heroes, you need to make sure that they're a little bit tanky at least to be able to soak up that damage. So Mystic, what is this going to do to the game? Nice broad question.
Okay, so originally, before these nerfs, healers were just taken everywhere just because they did everything that the other classes of heroes did, but they also healed. So like you have your assassin healers, you got, I guess Uther was maybe the only tank healer, and then we had the wave clear healers like Malfurion and shoot, who's the other one right now? Malfurion Rhaegar, yeah, with the lightning bond. And so now basically Blizzard is like, all right, we're nerfing heals, their health, and their wave clear, right? So if they didn't nerf their wave clear, what essentially would happen would be that you get 2 supports in every game still, just because, hey, they're just gonna, double up on the healing still, and the double support meta would still be there. But just the fact that they nerf these supports with the wave clear forces them to be like, okay, so now we have a choice. If we take double healer to compensate for the healing nerfs, then we need to take some extra wave clear for, that. And I think Blizzard is fine with that. So I think personally that people will still go double support to a certain extent, but it'll fade out a little bit and it'll just go back to single supports. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, if they go back to single supports, then isn't, everybody just gonna not be able to get healed enough? Well, it was only a 5% nerf. So while there are a lot of healers that, work really well in double supports, and I feel like there'll still be double supports for those healers, like Ana, you probably don't want a single healer Ana. It could work, but probably not. I think people will go to more single support and then just be like, okay, so this is the amount of healing that supports do now, and I think that'll just become the norm.
I think this is really going to hurt those healers that relied on the double support as well, like your Alexstrasza's, your Anas of the world too. Ironically, the 2 recent supports that just came out, because if double healer is less attractive, like obviously it's gonna be less attractive having those healers that require a secondary healer. So it almost, in terms of like the balancing of the healers, I feel this puts more emphasis on the healers that can solo heal, and I think we're gonna be seeing less variety in the healers that we come out with out of this, assuming that the solo support becomes the new meta again, and go back to like, you just your Rhaegars of the world, your Uthers, who are the typical like solo healers that can kind of carry the load themselves, and you might see the pick rates of heroes like Alexstrasza and Ana just drop off the map. So this also impacts other aspects of the game as well. One thing that I earmarked before starting the show was this increases the value, because none of them got nerfed, of self-sustain heroes, heroes with self-heals. You're looking at, your Gul'dans, for instance, or even your Raynors, who got a buff to his self-heal recently too, your Sonias, your Dehakas, anyone who can take care of themselves, suddenly they're looking a little bit more attractive here. If, I'm getting 5% less heals, maybe I can make up for that by healing the extra 5% myself. Do you think this is going to lead to a kind of like a side change of having those heroes maybe slightly eke up in win rates or become more contested?
I think that is correct, because back when people were running solo support and double healer wasn't a thing, a lot of people did take those self-sustained heroes along with their single healer, just because over the long, like, sustained team fight, they basically have more health to use for the entire team fight, just because they could back up for a split second and then use all their self-sustain plus their healer's heals, right? And to get themselves back up to full and then re-engage the fight. So
Wonder in chat brings up a really good point too. He said in a Blizzard Q&A today that they were saying, okay, they got their fingers ready on the button to change things, because they obviously, they're not new at this, being Blizzard. They have done plenty of reworks, plenty of adjustments, and this was a fairly major one, that they're going to be able to react to it quickly. This might make it a bit of a wild west while people are trying to figure things out, especially in Hero League for the next couple of weeks. But I imagine with this, with the stealth changes coming in, with the laning changes, just all the changes are coming with, we're going to see a lot of knobs turned and tuned over the coming, couple of months while things get figured out. And it's exciting, right? I mean, it's always fun to have that freshness to a game where there is a little bit of unknown. You don't go into Hero League being, okay, first ban Garrosh, second ban whoever. Like, it's not templated. It's nice. It adds a bit more of an element of, you got to be smart and outthink everyone else because you know this game better. You know how these changes are going to affect everything more than everybody else. So the other place that I think this is going to change things a little bit too, and again, 5% may not be a lot, but if you're going out from double support to single support, suddenly that's a lot less healing output altogether. I think that long, drawn-out fights are going to be more difficult to sustain through. If you have a Li Ming or a Chromie battering down your team, you're not going to be able to heal up as efficiently as you used to in the past. So I think this gives more value to poke or sustain teams that are just trying to slowly whittle away from a distance. Increasing the value of those raw damage dealers like the aforementioned Chromie or Li Ming, or even a Nazebo too that just does a lot of damage to everyone, or a Gul'dan even. Gul'dan's another character too. I see him kind of getting that side buff, that unexpected buff from this, because not only is he that raw damage dealer being able to put out a lot of damage that suddenly a single healer might not be able to handle, especially with these nerfs, but he's also got the self-sustain too to help take care of himself, so he doesn't need as many resources from his own healer. What do you think about how team fights are going to shape up? Because also in the competitive scene, you get those double supports, you'd have a 20-second scuffle and everyone would leave with full health and you feel like nothing happened. So I imagine these things are going to change.
Yeah, I think things are going to change more for either bursting one person down with a lot of CC. So you go in, you CC a target, and you burst them down with a Great Main Li Ming or something. So I could see that surfacing again because, if you try to do that now, they get an Ancestral, a bunch of heals to keep them up until the Ancestral hit, and then they just come out with full health, and you just be like, well, I just used everything to dive, and I used all my damage, but now, he's suddenly at full health, right? So that's it's kind of disheartening, but I think that might surface again, or like you were saying, the poke, where you just throw in a bunch of poke, and then the healer, he's gonna run out of mana, probably because it's just one healer, and he's not gonna be able to heal it up.
Joe Jack actually brings up another good point in chat too, something that we didn't talk about that Blizzard has mentioned about the just changes over the past year too. When they introduced the armor system specifically to Heroes of the Storm, that made essentially healing more efficient. If you're healing up a hero like a Garrosh who's got, say he's low health, got 30 armor or something like that, suddenly that heal, it's the same physical number of health you're giving to Garrosh that you'd be giving to anybody else, but you got more value there because he's got armor mitigating the damage, as part of his trait. So Blizzard said in the blog post, healing became more efficient, and that's part of the reason that we got this problem in the first place, because of all the prevalence of armor and armor being given across abilities and just baseline kits to a lot of heroes. So some notable changes to supports too that we haven't mentioned as well, because we kind of did a broad stroke here, but there are some specifics that changed too. Alexstrasza, she didn't have her damage nerfed like everyone else. And I put in the notes here, she didn't have her healing affected either, but Mystic was like, no. Because her health was nerfed, her healing's based on her health for her Q, so that does actually affect her healing output as well, because her health and healing are so closely tied. So she did get the nerf to her healing there as well. That might not shake out if you just initially read the notes, but just something to note there. But also her abundance, her W, got a cast range increase of 11%, which I think is a really important thing to note here, because if you ever play Alexstrasza and you say you're in full retreat, one thing that I often did, and I've seen a lot of people do, you toss down your W at your max distance on your retreat path. So maybe you can sneak out a heal as you're retreating. But I did notice you almost had to stop for a split second to be able to catch that, and that's the last thing you want to do while you're retreating. So that extra 11% will make it a little bit easier to get that on the retreat, or even on the engage too. If you're running after a team, you can place a little bit further ahead, lending to the utility of her W. Lily, she, I want to say, escaped unscathed here. She did get decreases to her damage and her health, but she got buffs to her healing across the board, including her ultimates. This is probably to adjust, just dial that dial that knob up a little bit, because she did have a pretty low win rate after her rework recently. Do you think LiQiuD needed these buffs? Because those heals, while plentiful, they were pretty small.
I think the reason for this, honestly, was because they reworked LiQiuD with these changes that were coming up in mind. You know how notice how Alex Straza didn't get that big of changes. So they reworked LiQiuD with these changes in mind. However, when LiQiuD came to live, they're like, even with the 5% reduction that we're doing on all the healers, I think she's still not going to do that good. So let's give her a little bit here.
Yeah, this was all the healers were tuned down, but LiQiuD was tuned up, and the tune-ups ended up outweighing the tune-downs for LiQiuD, so she ended up getting buffs on the heals. Lucio's level 16 Rejuvenescencia, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, has been nerfed probably more than the 5%. Well, actually, definitely more than the 5% we were talking about before, because the heal ticks that you used to get from that was 3% of your maximum health for all the allies in your range, but now it's down to 2.5% health per tick. So this obviously is quite a significant blow to Lucio, who a lot of people would say only becomes a real healer after level 16, and before that usually relied on a secondary healer too. So looks like Lucio's getting hit pretty hard by this patch. Malfurion got a brand new, really crappy talent, at least crappy in my eyes. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the go-to for all I know. Celestial Alignment at level 1. This is, I guess, to make up for the fact that he lost Moonburn, that wave clear centric talent that you could take at level 1. This will increase Moonfire's reveal duration, and I didn't even realize Moonfire did a reveal, but from 2 to 5 seconds. And Malfurion's basic attacks deal 100% extra damage to targets revealed by Moonfire. So maybe auto attack spam Moonfire Malfurion will become a thing, but likely not. So that's something new for him. Okay, so that's wrapping up our discussion on supports, because there's one other thing that we want to talk about. We didn't get a chance to talk about last week, and that's the incoming stealth changes. There's already been a little bit of chatter about this in our chat in Twitch, but we're going to go into it in a little bit more detail here. First off, though, on the PTR patch, just so everyone knows, Hanzo's live. You can play him. You don't need to use workarounds to try mode and try mode anymore. He's straight up in the PTR. Next week, we're going to be going a little bit more in depth on Hanzo, going over his kits and abilities and everything too, but we'll see that for next show. So Blizzard also posted a blog post about stealth changes and their reasoning for everything and exactly what they did. We've got the link for that in the show notes, but you can also check that out on Blizzard's blog. A few notes on stealth too that some people might not know about. Obviously, the one big thing that probably everyone knows about by now is that the shimmer is going to be easier to see. And it's really easy to see. If you haven't had a chance to try it out yet, either BlizzCon or in the PTR, it makes it so that unless you're really not paying attention, you're going to see the stealth hero. So they've added a new state. There's stealth, which is that where you see the quote-unquote shimmer, which is easy to see before. There's also an invisible state. So once you're stealthed and not moving for 1.5 seconds, and they said currently 1.5 seconds, they might change that, you'll be completely invisible, no shimmer or anything. This invisible state will not be allowed on contestable objectives when they're active. So if you're sitting on a Dragonshire contestable, like on one of the shrines, or Brax's holdout on the objective, or Hanamura on the not Hanamura, what's it called? Whatever. Oh, sorry, the other new one. What's the other new one called? Volskaya. There you go. When you're in the zone there, you're not going to be able to be invisible. And same thing when you're capturing, like on a capture point for mercs, you're just going to be invisible. Or so you're going to be stealth, not invisible. So they will be able to see the shimmer to get you out of it. And that makes sense. It's frustrating if you're a hero without a skill shot and you just can't get that Nova off the point. It can be frustrating. So I'm glad they're making that little small change there. They're also making a change to unrevealable as well, something that both Valir and Samuro have. When you're unrevealable, you will still be able to see the shimmer of that hero. However, your stealth won't be able to be broken during that unrevealable state, so taking damage won't make you revealed. So those are just how stealth is going to work in general. Now, Blizzard came and said, okay, we're making these changes. It's kind of a nerf to how easy it is to see a stealth hero, and the stealth heroes obviously rely on stealth, so we're going to have to change them in other places. So all the heroes got changes as well to accommodate, to adjust for this nerf to stealth. Now, I just want to mention it too because we're talking about it in chat. When on the PTR currently, now this isn't live because this new stealth changes only affects the Hammer stealth in PTR currently. But when Hammer sieges up, if she took ambush at level 1, she will go into stealth mode. So she'll steal this shimmer, but after 1.5 seconds, she'll go invisible. So you'll completely not be able to see her. That's not in live yet, but it's in the PTR and it's going to make it to live. So thinking back on it, I might have misinformed everyone when we were talking about it. So just want to kind of clarify that point. So going to the heroes with stealth that have got changes, they all have. Nova is the first one. And I actually got into a game on the PTR with Jhow playing Nova. And I watched his stream afterwards. He flamed me a little bit for hatting him as Abathur and throwing out some spikes when he was stealth. But besides that, he had pretty good impressions. He thought Nova was pretty strong out of this. So what changed with Nova? She got Ghost Protocol as an activatable ability, baseline. So you press your 1 button, you get an instant cloak. You become unrevealable for half a second, and you leave a holo decoy at your feet. Obviously, Nova relies on not being able to be seen. She doesn't have an escape like some of the others do. So you need this, I think, in order to, especially dropping a holo decoy at your feet, which is kind of cool, in order to make sure that you can kind of keep that confusion. Nova also gains 15% movement speed when cloaked. And Snipe Master is a baseline talent now. Now, Snipe did get nerfed, so this kind of compensates for that. So just to do the math here, when you're at full stacks, your Snipe's actually 23% stronger than your previously untalented Snipe on live. If you're at 4 stacks, you're still weaker. It turns out when you get to 5 stacks, that's where you get the benefit from being a Snipe Master compared to what it currently is today on live. So it gives you, more incentive to keep your stacks up. Holo decoys now do a small amount of damage baseline too. So you can throw it out to dismount a hero, and you can throw it out to interrupt an objective too, giving a little bit more utility to our holo decoys. Not to mention the AI apparently was improved on the holo decoys. So maybe if you're used to doing the Nova shuffle to pretend like you're a decoy, you gotta learn a new one. So what do you think about Nova? She's obviously been one of those heroes that everyone all the time is like, oh, you took Nova in Hero League. Like, what are you doing? Is this going to change? Is sentiment's going to change here?
So I had some things about Nova here that I really liked and I really didn't like, and they're kind of the same thing. So what I really liked was taking Snipe Master, and when you get that fully stacked, you basically did half of any squishy's health with 1 snipe. So that was really fun for me. Obviously, really fun for the stealthy, right? On the other end, it's if you get shot with 1 snipe and you lose half your health, that's not fun for anybody that isn't Nova, right? So I think with these changes and then how they're reducing Snipe Master, her baseline, to make it just a little bit stronger than what it is originally now, like untalented, I feel like that's gonna get rid of a lot of her damage, but I feel like that's okay. I don't think she really needed Snipe Master because I think it was current Snipe Master with her current damage is because it was a bit too strong. The rest of it, they gave holo decoy damage, which I think is really cool because now you got to gauge the damage. The decoy is gonna hit you, and it's like, so that did damage to me. But is it a decoy or is it the actual Nova?
Yep, and Nova relies on that subterfuge, so having that extra level of thought that you're going to have to put in to figure out which clone is the clone is very important for her play style. So Samuro got touched as well. So what they said is they want to improve or keep the feel of the 3-card Monty of trying to figure out which is the real Samuro. So when making images, one of the big pet peeves I've always had is that when you make your images, it's random which one you are. They're taking that away. They're making it so the real Samuro will now be the closest one to the mouse cursor when you cast your E ability in this case, or W or Q, whatever the ability is for Samuro. It's been a while since I played Samuro, but create those images. So Samuro can also now swap with his images using his trait. His D is now called Image Transmission. The only thing about this is it's not a 25-second cooldown, so you're not swapping frequently. It's not like you can just swap. You got to wait for it to cool down. But I mean, a great get out of jail free card almost. Use that image transmission if you're in trouble. Illusion Master, his ultimate, will now reduce the cooldown of image transmission from 25 to 8 seconds, increases the image damage by 100%, and 100% increased auto attack damage from Samuro himself. And illusions are still controllable by the player. Pretty interesting, especially if you're good at the micro. And then finally, images won't get one-shot by towers. Now that's kind of an effect of towers not having ammo anymore, so you can't drain the ammo by throwing out an image, so they took away that ability as well. Actually, there's one more finally. More damage has been given to Samuro and taken away from the images, giving more power to the real Samuro. So Samuro didn't get a ton change here. It's kind of neat because you can get a little extra escape, which I guess is important as a stealthy. But yeah, what do you think about how he's been changed here, Mystic?
Having a lot more damage on the main Samuro is kind of interesting for me because originally, you had a lot of talents that benefited your images and it made your images stronger. And then they're like, okay, so they're closer to the real Samuro, right? And now, you don't know which because they're all doing about the same amount of damage. You can only really tell by their health or with a reveal. And now, since most of the damage is coming from the main Samuro, then you're like, okay, so you can actually do a lot more damage. You don't have to rely on your images. The other thing I kind of find interesting is they made all these changes to Illusion Master. They increased the attack of the mirror images by 100%, and they increased Samuro's basic attack by 10% with the acquisition of Illusion Master, but they didn't change Bladestorm at all. And that's really weird to me because Bladestorm is the one that people don't take that much if they're playing Samuro. I'm kind of surprised why they didn't change that.
Yeah, well, again, maybe they were playtesting this and they thought this made more sense. I mean, to be honest with you, I remember when Samuro first came out, I thought Illusion Master was going to be the go-to for everybody straight off the bat because you do have that like enhanced ability. Obviously, it's a higher skill cap thing. But here, I feel like it's lending even more to making Samuro a higher skill cap character because you do have the options to like swap around even if you don't have Illusion Master taken yet. Okay, Valeera got some changes, and they noted, okay, Valeera, she might hurt from this specifically because if you can engage on a Valeera before she comes out of stealth one of her engage abilities, you hurt her pretty hard because she loses those engage abilities, and that's basically it for Valeera. So to combat this, after being in stealth for 3 seconds, Valeera's openers will actually teleport her to the enemy, and it's a fairly significant range. It's a range of 5, so it's your standard AA range. So you might be able to see Valeera coming, but you're unlikely going to be able to reach her or skill shot her unless you've got a really good skill shot going off before she has a chance to get her opener off. So she's also been given a few other changes too. 20% movement speed, up from 10% when using Vanish, so she moves a bit faster. Her stealth openers have all been changed too. Cheap Shot has had a reduced stun duration from 1.25 to 0.75 seconds. That's significant, half a second less. Garrote has increased silence duration from 2.25 to 2.75 seconds, which is a pretty long silence. I'm not sure what Sylvanas' Wailing Arrow is, but it's on par there. And then Assassinate does less damage, but now it reduces the target's armor by 10 for 4 seconds. So giving a bit more team playmaking ability there. So what are your thoughts on Valeera? I know LiQuiud's probably got lots to say, but unfortunately he's not here, so you're going to have to pull up the slack for him, Mystic.
Oh, man. Valeera, while, her current iteration in the game, only is like a pub stomper, and I understand that with the stealth changes, they had to make her stronger, but I don't know about the teleportation, because that kind of takes away one of Valeera's main weaknesses. It's like if you see her coming, right, you blast her with a spell or something like that, and then that removes her out of stealth, and that gets rid of her ambush, cheap shot, and garrote. Okay, but with this change to she almost always has it, which was originally death from above, right? You dash, or you basically come out of nowhere and then do your abilities. Now, since it's on every single ability, it removes that weakness. So she's going to be pretty strong after this, even if you can see her, because she does have that range now.
Yeah, and Valeera is one of those characters too that has been the one of the quick match champions. It's like, if you ever get fed up with the game, you're like, I'm just gonna take Valeera in a quick match and try and prey on some uncoordinated play. This might make it that even more oppressive too, if she has that range to jump on you, because you might be able to see her, but by the time you see her, it's probably too late anyways, especially with being able to be invisible if not moving at all, which I think is a really interesting mechanic too. So Zeratul, the final stealthy, he got some changes. Blizzard was pretty happy. I mean, Zeratul is one of the only stealth you see consistently in higher level or competitive play too. So they said they're generally happy with them, but they still want to change them a little bit. So the first thing is they made Vorpal Blade baseline. So Vorpal Blade, for those of you who don't know, it's an activatable ability. You can tap the button and it'll bring you to the last person you attack. So it gives you that teleport. So he'll have that teleport ability enough to talent into Vorpal Blade now. And then Shadow Assault. His other ultimate has been replaced by Might of the Nerazim. And this is pretty interesting. It gives him a passive, so he gets extra auto attack damage after using an ability, so kind of like a follow through. And then an active, so if he presses R, your R actually becomes your last ability that you used in whatever your chain is. So you can weave an extra ability into your combos. So if you blink, auto attack, you'll have another blink up. Or if you cleave, auto attack, you'll have another cleave, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how the combo shakes out here, because especially after level 22, this is where it gets scary. Your upgrade to your Might of the Nerazim turns R into a rewind as well. So you basically use it and you get a rewind. It pretty much serves the same purpose as rewind, but in this case you do it like in the middle with it, so you do your combo chain and you don't have to go up and press 1, it just happens on your R. So kind of thinking about this, like, why not just give him rewind? I guess that's what they're doing by putting this into 20. Is that what you think they're trying to accomplish here? Just a different way of giving a rewind, maybe a more like thematic one?
I think what they're trying to do was spread out VP and the ability to give, and the ability of rewind, because of the changes they made here, they took away rewind and they made it another ultimate. Then pros were using, or I guess every Zeratul was using VP, plus they had ability to jump everywhere, plus rewind. That just gave him an assassin with a free escape and basically the burst damage of a pyroblast or something. And because of that, I think Blizzard went in the direction of, we're going to separate this, so you have to kind of choose between VP or the assassin with the ability to pyroblast every 60 seconds.
So yeah, this combo is going to get nuts, especially post 20, right? With Might of the Nerazim. But do you think it's going to be able to replace Void Prison? Like, that's notably one of the strongest talents, especially playmaking talents in the game. Might of the Nerazim's got to be awfully strong in order to make a case there.
I think what people are going to do is realize that VP is probably still the way to go. So the reason that you're going to pick Zeratul now is just VP, right? Unless, you're playing quick match, in which case take Might of the Nerazim, you're just going to do a lot of damage. But yeah, so they're going to go VP into all their team's combos and whatnot. So I think that's still going to be the stronger ultimate, and then Zeratul is just going to have a little bit less damage as a kind of side thing of that.
Well, we'll have to see how these stealthies shake out. So we are going to close off the show here, but before we do, one very important thing I want to note. After the show, and if you're listening to the audio version of this, after the credits, we're going to be playing Family Feud, or the Nexus Feud, our own stylized version of it, with the Gankbush squad. It's going to be Trolls GG versus the Gankbush squad. I'm going to be hosting it too. We're going to start at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so in about 20 minutes or so. So definitely stick around or grab a bite to eat and come back, because it's going to be a blast. We did this on our 50th episode, and it's a lot of fun. So that being said, thanks everybody for listening to the Nexus Trolls, a Heroes of the Storm podcast, which we stream live on this Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TrollsGG, every week on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Now, if you're looking for LiQuiD, you can find them at LiQuiud LiQiuD, that's LiQiuD on Twitter. We're also going to be doing a trolling HGC after the feud, so probably around 9:30 or so. That'll be starting with Bags, potentially me, potentially a second emergency guest because LiQuiud had a work emergency today. Mystic, where can people find you?
You can find me at Mystic Shroud on Twitter.
And you can find me at DazHots on Twitter. Again, I want to thank all our Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/trollsgg. If you like the show and you're looking for a way to support us, you can do so there. You can also subscribe to our show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you happen to find your podcasts online. You can also visit our website at trolls.gg/TheNexusTrolls to watch this and past shows, along with past video streams, which can also be found on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/trollsgg. And for announcements about the show in general, here's the Storm News. You can follow us on Twitter at TheNexusTrolls. And if you want to hang out with us and the Trolls community in game, you can /join TrollsGG in game, or you can join us on our Discord channel, which has become very popular over the past couple of months. Trolls.gg/Discord. Great place to join in the conversation. And finally, if you need to get in touch with us, the best way is by email at TheNexusTrolls@trolls.gg. So Mystic, thanks again for helping me host. LiQuiud, sorry you couldn't be here, bud. We miss you. We'll see you next week. Everybody, thanks for listening, and have a great week.